Tom Patterson had been raising cattle on his family's Montana ranch for almost 20 years. Every morning started the same way. He'd wake up before sunrise, brew a strong pot of coffee, and head out to check on his herd. The cattle would greet him with their usual morning sounds, a chorus of moos that echoed across the valley. To Tom, it was music, the sound of home, the sound of a life well lived. His ranch covered 200 acres of beautiful Montana countryside, rolling hills, green pastures, and wide open skies. His grandfather had bought this land back in the 1950s, when you could still get a decent spread for a reasonable price. His father had worked it before him. Now it was Tom's turn to carry on the family tradition. Life was good and simple. Tom knew every inch of his property. He knew which pastures stayed green the longest in summer. He knew where the cattle liked to gather on hot afternoons. He knew the best spots for calving season when the mothers needed quiet and shelter. This wasn't just a business to him. It was his entire world. The neighboring properties were mostly other farms and ranches. Old Bill Thompson had sheep on the south side. The Rodriguez family grew hay on the west. Everyone understood the rhythm of farm life. Nobody complained when tractors rumbled at dawn. Nobody got upset about the smell of manure in spring. Nobody called to complain about roosters crowing or cows mooing. That was just country living. Everyone got it, but things were about to change in a big way. One afternoon in late summer, Tom noticed something unusual. A surveying crew had shown up on the property next to his eastern fence line. They were measuring, marking, staking out sections of land. Tom felt a knot form in his stomach. He knew what this meant. Development. The Peterson family had owned that land for decades. They'd run a small cattle operation, nothing fancy, just enough to make a modest living. But old Mr. Peterson had passed away the previous winter, and his kids had no interest in ranching. They'd sold the 150 acres to a developer from California. Within weeks, the machines arrived. Bulldozers, excavators, dump trucks. Tom watched from his property as they carved roads through what used to be peaceful pasture. Trees came down. The land was graded flat. Concrete was poured. The transformation happened faster than he expected. By fall, houses were going up. Not just a couple of houses either. The developer had planned an entire subdivision. They called it Meadowbrook Estates. The name made Tom shake his head. There wasn't a brook anywhere near the place, and after all the construction, there wasn't much of a meadow left either. But he supposed it sounded nice to city folks looking for a taste of country life. The houses were big and modern. Large windows, wraparound porches, perfectly landscaped yards. They looked expensive. Tom figured they were being marketed to people from Seattle or Portland who wanted to escape urban life but still wanted all their modern comforts. The first families moved in just before winter. Tom tried to stay optimistic. Maybe these new neighbors would be reasonable people. Maybe they'd understand what it meant to live near a working ranch. After all, they'd chosen to move to the country. Surely they knew what they were getting into. He was wrong. The first phone call came on a Tuesday morning in March. Tom had just finished his morning chores and was heading inside for breakfast when his cell phone rang. The number wasn't familiar. "Hello, this is Tom." "Yes, hello. My name is Linda Morrison. I live in Meadowbrook Estates and I need to discuss a problem with you." Her tone was clipped and formal, not friendly. "Okay, what's going on?" Tom asked, genuinely curious. "Your cows woke me up this morning at 5:30. The constant mooing is unacceptable. You need to do something about it." Tom stood there, phone pressed to his ear, genuinely confused. "Ma'am, those are cattle. They make noise, especially in the morning during feeding time." "Well, I didn't move all the way out here to be woken up by farm animals at the crack of dawn. Surely there's something you can do. Keep them quieter. Or farther from our homes." Tom took a deep breath. He wanted to stay calm. "Mrs. Morrison, my ranch has been here for 70 years. The cattle are doing what cattle do. They're not being mistreated or neglected. They're just being cows. That's not my problem. I paid good money for my home, and I expect peace and quiet. I suggest you figure something out, or I'll be calling the county." She hung up before Tom could respond. He stood there holding his phone, staring at it like it might explain what just happened. Someone had actually called to complain about cows mooing in the country. On a ranch that had been there for decades, his wife Helen came to the door. "Who was that?" "New neighbor. Says the cows are too loud." Helen laughed at first, thinking he was joking. When she realized he wasn't, her smile faded. "You're serious? She complained about cow sounds?" Apparently 5:30 is too early for cattle to moo. What did you tell her? That cows are cows. What else could I say? Helen shook her head. This is going to be a problem, isn't it? Tom didn't answer. He didn't have to. They both knew she was right. Over the next few weeks, more families moved into Meadowbrook Estates. The subdivision filled up quickly. Tom watched his new neighbors with growing concern. They weren't farmers or ranchers. They were professionals working remote jobs, retirees seeking mountain views, young families wanting space for their kids. Nice people, probably, but people who had no idea what living next to a working ranch actually meant. The complaints started slowly at first. A phone call here and there, but soon they picked up momentum. The cows were too loud. The tractors were too noisy. The smell from the manure spreading was unbearable. The dust from the dirt roads was coating their cars. The cattle trucks arriving early in the morning were disturbing their sleep. Tom tried to be patient. He tried to explain. He tried to be a good neighbor. But nothing he said seemed to matter. These people had moved to the country expecting a postcard version of rural life. All scenery, no reality. And when the reality didn't match their expectations, they decided the problem was him. His peaceful life was about to become a war zone. Within 3 months, what started as occasional phone calls turned into an organized campaign against Tom's ranch. Linda Morrison, the woman who'd first complained about his cows, had found plenty of allies in Meadowbrook Estates. She wasn't just making phone calls anymore. She was building an army. It started with a Facebook group. Linda created a page called Meadowbrook Quality of Life Coalition. Within days, 35 homeowners had joined. They began posting photos and videos of Tom's ranch operations. A tractor driving past at 6 in the morning, cattle being herded from one pasture to another, dust clouds rising from the dirt roads during dry season, the manure spreader doing its job in the fields. Every single post came with complaints. Woken up again by farm noise. Can't even open my windows because of the smell. Is this even legal? The comments section turned into an echo chamber, where everyone agreed that Tom was ruining their peaceful country paradise. Tom didn't have Facebook, but his daughter showed him the page one evening. He scrolled through the posts, his jaw clenching tighter with each one. These people were documenting his daily work, like he was committing crimes. Tasks his grandfather had done, his father had done, tasks he'd done for 20 years without a single complaint. We're suddenly being treated like violations, Dad. Some of these comments are pretty nasty, his daughter said quietly. They're saying you're doing this on purpose to bother them. Of course I'm not doing it on purpose, Tom said. I'm running a ranch, same as I always have. But the Facebook group was just the beginning. Linda and her neighbors took their complaints to the next level. They started calling the county zoning office. They called the health department. They called animal control. Each agency would send someone out to inspect Tom's operation, and each time they'd find nothing wrong. Tom was following every regulation. His animals were healthy and well cared for. His manure management met all environmental standards. Everything was by the book. Still, the inspections kept coming. Each one meant Tom had to stop his work, show officials around, answer the same questions over and over. It was harassment dressed up as concerned citizenship. Then came the petition. Linda printed out a formal document demanding that the county force Tom to either drastically reduce his herd, implement noise reduction measures, or cease operations entirely. She went door to door in Meadowbrook Estates collecting signatures. Out of 43 homes, 31 people signed. When Tom saw the petition, something inside him shifted. These weren't just complaints anymore. These people were actively trying to shut down his family's ranch. A ranch that had been there decades before their subdivision even existed. He tried one last time to make peace. Tom organized an open ranch day, inviting all his new neighbors to come see his operation firsthand. He thought if they understood what ranching actually involved, maybe they'd be more reasonable. He'd explain the necessity of early morning work, show them how he managed waste responsibly, introduce them to his cattle. Helen made cookies. Tom cleaned up the barn. They set up information stations explaining different aspects of ranch operations. They waited. Only 2 families showed up. One couple seemed genuinely interested. They asked good questions and thanked Tom for his time. The other couple, A man and woman in expensive outdoor gear that had clearly never seen actual outdoor work spent the entire visit taking notes and photos. Not the friendly kind of photos either, the evidence-gathering kind. "Do you have permits for all these structures?" the man asked, pointing at the equipment barn. "Of course," Tom replied. "And how close is your manure storage to our property line? There are regulations about that, you know." Tom felt his patience wearing thin. "Everything here is legal and permitted. I'm in full compliance," the couple left without saying thank you. 2 days later, Tom received a formal letter from their attorney. The letter was 3 pages of legal language, but the message was clear. 7 homeowners, led by Linda Morrison, were threatening to sue Tom for creating a private nuisance. They claimed his ranch operations were substantially interfering with their use and enjoyment of their properties. They demanded immediate action or they'd take him to court. Tom sat at his kitchen table reading the letter 3 times. His hands were shaking. Not from fear exactly, but from anger and disbelief. He'd done nothing wrong. He was doing the same work his family had done for 70 years. And now strangers who'd lived here for less than a year were threatening to sue him. He called his attorney, an older man named George, who'd handled his family's legal matters for decades. George listened to the whole story without interrupting. "Tom, I'm going to be straight with you," George said. "They don't have a legal leg to stand on. Montana has strong right to farm laws. Your ranch predates their homes by decades. You're following all regulations. No judge in this state would rule against you. So I'm protected? Legally, yes. But here's the problem. Even if you win, you lose. Legal battles are expensive and stressful. These people might not win in court, but they can make your life miserable trying. They've got time and money to burn. The question is, do you want to spend the next 2 years fighting this?" Tom didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the familiar sounds of his ranch. An owl hooting in the barn, cattle shifting in the nearby pasture, the wind moving through the cottonwood trees. Sounds that had always brought him peace now reminded him of his troubles. Helen rolled over and touched his shoulder. "You okay?" "No," he admitted. "I don't know what to do. George says we'd win in court, but the fight itself might break us. The stress, the legal fees, the constant harassment. I don't know if I can do this for years." "We'll figure it out," Helen said. "We always do," but Tom wasn't so sure. For the first time in his life, he felt unwelcome on his own land. The place his grandfather had built, the land he'd poured his life into, suddenly felt like a battlefield, and his enemies weren't going anywhere. The next morning, Tom drove into town to clear his head. He needed distance from the ranch, from the complaints, from the stress. He took the long route past farms and fields and open country. That's when he saw it. The sign that would change everything. On the western edge of Meadowbrook Estates, bordering the state highway, stood a large property that had belonged to the Walker family for generations. Old Man Walker had passed away 6 months earlier, and his kids had finally decided to sell. The sign was simple and direct. On 80 acres. For sale. Contact Riverside Realty. Tom pulled over and stared at that sign. And Tom sat in his truck staring at that for sale sign for a long time. His mind was racing. The Walker property wrapped around the western and southern edges of Meadowbrook Estates. If he bought it, he wouldn't just own the land on one side of the subdivision. He'd own land on 3 sides of it. More importantly, the property included something else. The private access road that 7 of the estate homes used to reach the main highway ran directly through the Walker land. Tom knew this because Old Man Walker had complained about it for years. The developer had promised to maintain the road but rarely did. Walker had been too tired to fight about it, but Tom wasn't tired. Not anymore. He pulled out his phone and called the number on the sign. A real estate agent answered on the 3rd ring. "Hi, I'm calling about the Walker property, the 180 acres. Is it still available?" "Yes, sir, it absolutely is. Beautiful piece of land. Are you looking to farm it or develop it?" "Farm it," Tom said. "I run cattle. I'm actually the neighboring property owner." "Oh, perfect. Then you already know the land. When would you like to see it?" "I know it well enough." "What's the asking price?" the agent told him. Tom felt his stomach drop. It was expensive, more than he'd hoped. But it was also fair market value. The land was good, flat in some places, rolling hills in others. Good water access, solid fencing already in place. "I'd like to make an offer," Tom said. That evening, Tom spread out maps and financial documents on his kitchen table. Helen sat across from him watching her husband with concern. She knew that look on his face. He was planning something big. "Talk to me," she said. "What are you thinking?" Tom explained his idea. Buy the Walker property. Move his noisiest operations to the sections that ran along the Meadowbrook borders. Show these complainers what a real working ranch looked like when you tried to shut it down. "Is this about expanding the ranch or getting revenge?" Helen asked quietly. Tom was silent for a moment. That was the question he'd been asking himself all day. "Maybe both," he finally admitted. "Look, we've been wanting to expand anyway. The cattle business is good right now. We could use more grazing land. This property makes sense financially." "But," Helen prompted, "But yeah, part of me wants to make a point. These people have been making my life hell for months. They're trying to force me out of business. They threatened to sue me, and now I have a chance to show them they picked the wrong neighbor to mess with." Helen studied her husband's face. She'd been married to him for 25 years. She knew when he was hurt, even when he tried to hide it behind anger. "You feel disrespected," she said. "In your own home?" Tom nodded, his jaw tight. "My grandfather built this ranch from nothing. My dad kept it going through droughts and recessions. I've put everything I have into this place, and these people show up, live here for 5 minutes and act like I'm the problem. Like I'm doing something wrong by living the same life my family has lived for 70 years. So what happens if you buy it? Then they're surrounded, and they'll think twice before complaining again." Helen reached across the table and took his hand. "Just promise me something. Don't become the kind of person they think you are. Don't do this just to hurt them." Tom squeezed her hand. "I won't. But I'm done being pushed around on my own land." The offer went in the next morning. Tom offered asking price with a quick closing. The Walker family accepted within 48 hours. They were relieved to have a local rancher buying it instead of another developer. News spread fast in a small community. Within a week, everyone in Meadowbrook Estates knew that Tom had purchased the Walker property. The Facebook group exploded with panic and anger. "He's doing this to spite us." One post read, "We need to contact a lawyer immediately," another demanded. "Can he even do this? Isn't this harassment?" Someone asked, but Tom wasn't breaking any laws. He was buying land. The same thing any person had the right to do. The same thing the Meadowbrook residents had done when they bought their homes. Linda Morrison called him 3 days after the sale went through. Her voice was shaking with anger. "I know what you're doing and it won't work. We have rights too." "So do I," Tom said calmly. "I bought property, just like you did. You're trying to intimidate us. I'm expanding my ranch. If that intimidates you, maybe you shouldn't have moved next to a ranch." She hung up on him. Tom closed on the property 3 weeks later. The day he got the keys, he drove over with Helen to walk the land. It was beautiful. Rolling pasture, good soil, a small creek running through the southern section. His grandfather would have loved it. "What's your first move?" Helen asked as they stood on a hill overlooking both his properties. Tom pointed to a flat section that ran directly behind 6 of the estate homes. "Sorting corrals. That's where I'll separate cattle before taking them to market. It's loud work. Lots of bellowing. But it's necessary work. And that section?" Helen pointed to another area near Linda Morrison's property line. "Equipment storage. Tractors, hay equipment, the manure spreader. I'll need to start them up early on workdays. 4:30, 5 in the morning sometimes. You're really doing this. I'm running a ranch, Helen, a bigger ranch now. If they don't like it, they can sell and move back to the city where they belong." Over the next month, Tom began relocating his operations. He moved the sorting corrals to the western property, right where he'd planned. He shifted his equipment barn to a spot that, while perfectly legal and properly zoned, happened to be close to several estate homes. He rerouted some of his cattle movements so they'd pass along the new property lines. Everything he did was legal. Everything followed proper agricultural practices. But the strategic placement was impossible to miss. The complaints stopped almost immediately. Not because people stopped being annoyed, but because they suddenly realized the position they were in. Tom didn't just own land next to them anymore. He surrounded them. And if they kept pushing, things could get a lot worse. There was something else too. The private access road. Tom now owned the land that road crossed, which meant he had certain rights about who used it and when. He didn't block the road. That would have been illegal and wrong. But he did send a formal letter to the 7 homeowners who used it. The letter, written by his attorney George, was polite but firm. It informed them that as the new property owner, he expected them to contribute to road maintenance. He also noted that his cattle trucks and farm equipment would be using the road regularly, often in early morning hours, as was his right as the landowner. The letter included one more detail, a reminder that the road crossed his property, and while he had no intention of interfering with their access, he hoped they understood the nature of shared use in agricultural areas. Linda Morrison received her letter on a Thursday. She read it 3 times, each time feeling the reality of her situation sink in deeper. She'd tried to force out a rancher who'd been there for decades, and now that rancher controlled access to her home. She looked out her window at Tom's new sorting corrals being built in the distance. The sound of construction equipment filled the air. Soon it would be cattle sounds, lots of them. For the first time since moving to Montana, Linda Morrison understood what it meant to be outmaneuvered. She'd started a war she couldn't win, and now she was living with the consequences. The first cattle truck arrived at 4:45 on a Monday morning. Tom had scheduled it intentionally, not to be cruel but to make a point. This was ranching. This was the reality these people had tried to legislate away with their complaints and lawyers and Facebook posts. The truck's diesel engine rumbled down the access road that cut through his new property, right past 3 of the estate homes. Lights came on in windows. Tom watched from his own truck, coffee in hand. He wasn't smiling. This wasn't fun for him, but it was necessary. By noon that day, his phone started ringing. He didn't answer. By evening, he had 17 missed calls and a dozen text messages. Most were angry. Some were threatening. One simply said, "You're going to regret this." Tom showed the text to Helen that night. "They still don't get it," she said, shaking her head. "They think you're the bad guy." "Let them think what they want," Tom replied. But his voice was tired. This wasn't the victory he'd imagined. It just felt like more fighting. The Facebook group went into overdrive. Posts appeared hourly documenting every sound, every truck, every moment of ranch activity. But the tone had changed. The confidence was gone. Now the posts sounded desperate. "Can we sue him for noise pollution?" Someone asked. "I contacted a lawyer. They said his right to farm protections are ironclad." Another responded. "Maybe we should just sell and cut our losses," a third person suggested. That comment got shouted down immediately. Several homeowners were already trying to sell, but property values had tanked. Homes that had sold for $500,000 8 months ago were now sitting on the market for $350 with no offers. No one wanted to buy into a subdivision surrounded by an active cattle ranch, especially not one where the rancher had a reputation for being difficult. 3 weeks after Tom's purchase, the for sale signs started appearing. First 1 house, then 3, then 7. Nearly a quarter of Meadowbrook Estates was trying to escape. But escape wasn't easy when you were underwater on your mortgage and couldn't find buyers. Tom drove past those signs every day. Part of him felt vindicated. These people had tried to destroy his livelihood. Now they were paying the price. But another part of him, the part that Helen had warned him about, felt hollow. This wasn't who he wanted to be. A man who took satisfaction in his neighbor's financial ruin. One Saturday morning, Tom was repairing fence line along his eastern property when he saw someone walking toward him. A woman. For a moment, he thought it might be Linda Morrison coming to yell at him again. But as she got closer, he realized it was someone different. Younger, maybe mid-30s, wearing jeans and boots that actually looked used. "Mr. Patterson?" she called out. "That's me," Tom said, setting down his tools. "I'm Rachel Chen. I live in the blue house on Pinewood Drive. Do you have a minute?" Tom wiped his hands on his jeans. "I guess so." Rachel looked nervous. She kept glancing back toward the subdivision like she was worried about being seen. "I wanted to apologize," she said, "for all of this. The complaints, the Facebook group, everything. My husband and I never signed that petition. We didn't join in the legal threats. But we didn't speak up against it either. And I'm sorry for that." Tom studied her face. She seemed genuine. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Because it's gotten out of hand. People are losing money, losing their homes. Families are fighting. The whole neighborhood has turned toxic. And for what? Because cows make noise? It's insane." "Your neighbors started this fight," Tom said. His voice was harder than he intended. "I know. I know they did. Linda and her group. They were completely out of line. They treated you terribly. You had every right to defend yourself." Rachel paused. "But I'm worried about where this ends." "You've won. Everyone knows it. The question is what happens now." "What do you mean?" I mean, you could keep pushing. Keep making things worse for everyone. You have that power now. Or you could back off a little. Not give up what's yours, just ease up. Show people you're not the enemy they made you out to be. Tom felt anger flare in his chest. Why should I? They tried to destroy me. You're right. You don't owe anyone anything. But I'm asking anyway. Because some of us are just normal people who made a mistake moving here. We have kids. We have jobs. We're not wealthy. We can't just absorb these losses and start over. Tom didn't respond. He turned back to his fence, picking up his tools. Rachel stood there for a moment longer. My daughter asks me every morning if the nice cows are coming back to the near pasture. She's 6. She doesn't understand any of this. She just likes watching the calves play. She walked away without waiting for a response. That conversation stuck with Tom for days. He kept thinking about that 6-year-old girl, about the families who hadn't been part of Linda's crusade but were suffering anyway, about the difference between justice and revenge. Helen noticed his mood at dinner one night. You're quiet, she said. I talked to one of the neighbors. The younger woman in the blue house. What did she want? She apologized. Said her daughter likes watching the calves. Helen waited, knowing there was more. I've been thinking, Tom continued slowly, about what I'm doing. Why I'm doing it, and I wanted to teach them a lesson. Show them they can't push me around, and I did that. Everyone knows they lost. But now what? Do I just keep making their lives miserable? Is that who I want to be? Helen reached across the table and took his hand. You're a good man, Tom. You got angry and you had every right to be angry. But you're not cruel. That's not in your nature. They don't deserve my kindness. Maybe not. But you deserve peace. Real peace. Not this constant tension and fighting. Tom sat with that thought. He'd spent months feeling like a victim, then weeks feeling like a conqueror. Neither feeling had brought him any happiness. He just wanted to ranch. To live his life. To wake up without his stomach in knots. The next morning, Tom made a decision. He wasn't going to give up his new property. He wasn't going to move his operations back. He'd fought for his rights and he'd keep them. But maybe he didn't need to schedule every noisy activity at the worst possible time. Maybe he could give a heads up before major operations. Maybe he could remember that not everyone in Meadowbrook Estates was his enemy. It wasn't surrender. It was something else. Something harder than fighting. It was choosing to be reasonable even when you had every right not to be. That afternoon, Tom was moving cattle when he noticed something. That little girl from the blue house was standing at her back fence watching. Her mother stood behind her, keeping a careful distance. Tom guided a calf closer to the fence. The little girl's face lit up with delight. She waved at Tom. He waved back. It was a small gesture, but it was a start. 2 months passed. Tom stuck to his decision. He kept his operations on the new property, but he stopped scheduling things deliberately early. When he needed to move cattle at dawn, he did. When he could wait until 7, he waited. It wasn't weakness. It was practicality. Ranching was hard enough without making enemies of everyone around you. The Facebook group got quieter. People were exhausted from fighting. The daily complaint posts dwindled to once a week, then once every few weeks. Some families sold their homes at a loss and left. Others accepted their situation and stopped talking about it. The neighborhood that had been so united in anger was now just tired. Then one evening in late October, something unexpected happened. Tom was in his barn doing evening chores when he heard a vehicle pull up. He walked outside to find Linda Morrison sitting in her car. She hadn't gotten out yet. She was just sitting there, hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. Tom waited. After a long minute, she opened the door and stepped out. Mr. Patterson, she said. Her voice was different, quieter, no anger in it. Mrs. Morrison, can we talk? Just for a few minutes? Tom almost said no. This woman had caused him months of stress. She'd organized the complaints, started the Facebook group, threatened lawsuits. Part of him wanted to tell her to get off his property, but something in her face stopped him. She looked defeated, not in a satisfied way, in a way that made him uncomfortable. All right, he said. Let's talk. They sat on his porch steps. Linda didn't speak right away. She seemed to be gathering her words. I need to tell you something, she finally said. And I need you to just listen. Can you do that? Tom nodded. I moved here because I was running from something. Not the law or anything like that, just life. My husband died 3 years ago. Cancer. We'd planned to retire together, travel, enjoy our golden years. Instead, I watched him waste away in a hospital bed. She paused, her voice cracking slightly. After he died, I couldn't stay in our house in Seattle. Everything reminded me of him. So I sold everything and came here. I thought this place would heal me. The mountains, the quiet, the fresh air. I thought I could rebuild my life. Tom listened, saying nothing, but I was angry. At everything. At God, at the world, at my bad luck. And when your cows woke me up that first morning, it wasn't really about the noise. It was about control. I couldn't control my husband's death. I couldn't control my grief. But I thought I could control this. I thought if I just complained enough, fought hard enough, I could fix this one thing. I could win this one battle. She looked at Tom directly for the first time. I was wrong. And I'm sorry. I turned you into an enemy because I needed someone to fight. And I dragged all those other people into it with me. Some of them lost their homes because of me, because I couldn't deal with my own pain. Tom sat quietly for a moment. This wasn't what he'd expected. He'd expected more fighting, or maybe a plea to move his operations. Not this raw honesty. Why are you telling me this now? He asked. Because I saw you wave at the Chen girl the other day. That little moment of kindness when you had every reason to be cruel. It made me realize something. You're not the villain I made you out to be. You're just a man trying to live his life. And I attacked you for it. She stood up slowly. I know you don't owe me anything. I know saying sorry doesn't fix what I did. But I wanted you to know I understand now. This is your home. It was your home long before it was mine. I should have respected that from the beginning. She turned to leave, but Tom spoke up. Mrs. Morrison. Linda. She stopped. I'm sorry about your husband. That's hard. Harder than anything I've been through. Linda's eyes filled with tears. She nodded and walked back to her car. After she left, Tom sat on his porch for a long time. Helen came out and sat beside him. I saw her car, Helen said. What did she want? Tom told her about the conversation. About Linda's husband, her grief, her apology. What are you thinking? Helen asked. I'm thinking that people are complicated. I spent months hating that woman. And maybe I had good reasons. But now I just feel sad for her. Does this change anything? I don't know, maybe. The next week, Tom made a decision. He put up a small sign at the entrance to his ranch. Patterson Family Ranch, visitors welcome. Please check in at main house. It was a small gesture, but word spread. Rachel Chen brought her daughter by that Saturday. Tom showed them the new calves and let the little girl pet a gentle cow named Buttercup. The girl was delighted. Can we come back? She asked her mother. If Mr. Patterson says it's okay, Rachel replied. You're welcome anytime, Tom said, and he meant it. Over the next few months, something unexpected happened. Other families started stopping by. Not Linda's core group. They'd mostly sold and left. But the reasonable people, the ones who just wanted to live in the country without understanding what that meant, they started coming around. Tom found himself giving informal tours, explaining ranching to city people who genuinely wanted to learn, showing kids where their food came from, building bridges instead of walls. One spring morning, Tom was fixing fence when he noticed Linda Morrison working in her garden. She'd stayed. Despite everything, despite the property value loss, despite the embarrassment, she'd stayed. She saw him looking and raised her hand in a tentative wave. Tom waved back. They weren't friends. They probably never would be. But they weren't enemies anymore either. They were just neighbors learning to live side by side. Tom's ranch continued to operate. The cows still mooed at dawn. The tractors still rumbled in early morning. The cattle truck still rolled down that access road. Because that was ranching. That was the life. But now when Tom heard those sounds, he didn't tense up waiting for complaint calls. He just heard his ranch, his home. The life his grandfather built, and he was proud to continue. The war was over. Not because anyone won or lost, but because people on both sides got tired of fighting and decided to try something harder. They decided to try understanding each other. 3 years later, Tom still owns both properties. His herd has grown. Business is good. The remaining families in Meadowbrook Estates have made their peace with living next to a working ranch. Some have even become supporters, defending his operations when new people move in and start to complain. Linda Morrison still lives in her house. She waves to Tom when she sees him. Sometimes she brings over tomatoes from her garden. He brings her fresh eggs from his chickens. They're not close, but they're civil. And sometimes that's enough. On quiet evenings, Tom sits on his porch with Helen and looks out over his land. Both properties. All those acres. All those cattle. The life he fought for and almost lost to anger and pride. He's learned something important. You can win a war and still lose yourself. Or you can choose mercy and find something better than victory. You can find peace. And in the end, peace was what he'd wanted all along.